Hey, welcome everyone to the ArchiCAD User Monthly Webinar for December 2023. My name is Eric Bobrow and I'm speaking to you from San Rafael, California. We're a little bit cool as we head into winter. Let me know where you're calling in from and that you can hear me and see the screen. I believe I have my screen sharing turned on. Yeah, so I'll check on the chat messages or the question messages. So Ian from Scotland, Nicole from Berkeley. All right, so Berkeley just around the corner, and Ken Andrews now in Florida for the winter. All right, so yeah, just please say hello and let me know where you're calling in from. Jerry from Maine. Oh, okay. Alexander from Australia. Okay, I'm glad to connect with you directly. We've been emailing back and forth, so welcome to my world here. All right, so what are we going to do today? I'm going to be focusing on MasterTemplate 27 and design options. They're closely interlinked because design options is a new feature in ArchiCAD 27. And I spent quite a bit of time just really working through the different scenarios to try to optimize the template and my understanding of the workflow for design options. So I'll give you an overview of what today's session is going to be about, and we'll get going here. All right, so in terms of an overview, I'm going to be talking a little bit about MasterTemplate and templates in general and just how they fit into the world of ArchiCAD. Then I'm going to be looking at design options and how Graphisoft has set it up as a solution that is far superior to what we had before for this particular area of practice. So let me try to do the overview of MasterTemplate and what templates are about relatively quickly so that we can spend most of our time on the design options and how that's implemented in MasterTemplate and how you can, whether you're using MasterTemplate or your own template or Graphisoft supplied one, how you can use design options as effectively as possible. So my background, I've been working with ArchiCAD since 1989, so that's like 34 years now. I've sold the program, was a reseller for 20 years, and then since 2010, have been a consultant and trainer for ArchiCAD. And then my other business, which many of you know, is the Architect Marketing Institute, where we help small design firms, architecture and interior design, etc., attract and win better clients and projects. So if business development and getting better projects is something that you want to work on, certainly reach out to me, support@bobrow.com, or check out our website at archmarketing.org, archmarketing.org. All right, so what comes in the box with ArchiCAD and how does that relate to something like MasterTemplate? Well, in the box, there's a standard template. So when you start up ArchiCAD, there's a structure there. It's not just a blank sheet, even though there's no project on there. It has layers, so there's a place to put things. It has views defined so that you can click on a view to say, I want to do a floor plan or a ceiling plan or a site plan. There are layout sheets set up, at least a few of them, organized so that you have a place to put your drawings and print them out. Now, the origin of MasterTemplate is that as a reseller for 20 years, I found that people were confused how to run a real project. Ultimately, they found that the built-in template in the Graphisoft supplied was limiting and that they needed to add more layers to be able to accommodate different things. They needed more views. They needed to set up sheets in different ways. And so with all my background training and supporting clients, I set up to create the best template possible, something that provided the most robust support and framework for projects. I worked closely at the beginning with one of my consultants, an architect named Scott Bulmer. So he co-created the original template, and I've been running that and developing and refining it ever since. that goes back to 2007 and ArchiCAD 10 and 11. So it's been going for 16 years, 16 plus years now. All right, so in order to understand what a template is about and why it's so important, I'm going to very briefly go over my 7 keys to best practices. So when you're working with ArchiCAD, there are good ways to do things and there are less effective ways to do things. Now, one of the keys that is true in everywhere in life is to get organized. So if you have things organized, you can work more effectively. How does that play out? Well, can you set things up so you do them once and you don't have to redo them? So to what extent can you use ArchiCAD's functions with favorites and other things to be able to say, all right, that's how I want these walls to be done, or that's how I want this graphic to look on a sheet. Saving your settings is a key part of that. So whether it's settings for a view, for a particular drawing, or settings for windows or objects that you're going to reuse, why have to think that out over and over again? Why not just save it? Now, working from the general to the specific, we all think about design, and a client comes along and says, I want to do a kitchen remodel, or I want to do a whole new luxury home on a hillside. You think about, okay, well, how many square feet, or where are the setbacks, or what are the constraints, what's the budget, etc. And as you work with it, you get the program requirements, how the rooms have to be laid out, and then ultimately you get more and more specific about the wall assemblies and the details of how the cove molding matches this, and the roof line, etc. So when you think about ArchiCAD, also, how can you work with the tools so that you set up, say, wall types that can start out more general and then get more specific as you need to make decisions there. Using ArchiCAD structure is a key part of this, because, for example, if you go to the layout sheet, for example, and say, I want to change the name of the drawing on the layout sheet, you can. But if you do it there, then when you go back to your view map or the project map, it may be confusing. Well, which one of these elevations is it, or which one of those details is it? So one part of using the structure is that you would make a change in the project map or the view map, and then it gets inherited on the layout sheet. So that's taking advantage of the structure. Another general principle I always teach is the more you can model and incorporate into the 3D model, the less you have to draw, because basically the model generates the drawings. So if you get skillful in that, then less drafting, easier to make things consistent because the program generates the drawings. Keep it safe is, simply make sure that you have backups, make sure that you have multiple places where files are saved. ArchiCAD has a very robust autosave feature. It got better and better over the years, so that's less of an issue for people, but still, I've had people come and say, you know what, I was working for a few hours and it crashed, or I left the office, and when I started up again, the work was missing. Well, they may have neglected some of the basic framework of keeping things safe. Now, in a template, when you start up a project, as I said, you have a structure with layers. Now, a really good template will have a well thought out layer system, minimizing the need to create new layers on the fly. So when you're working in your office, everybody has somewhat different needs. Some are working on large commercial projects, some on small residential remodels, some are working in timber or wood framed construction, some are working in concrete and steel, etc. So do you have a layer system? Do you ever run into the issue where I don't know what layer to put this on? Oh, let me create a layer for that. Well, to the extent that you can make your template have those layers already built in, you don't have to rethink it. Each project is going to have the same layers. You don't have to, look at the project and say, well, where the heck did this go? You're going to have consistency. Attributes as well, fill, surface, building materials. I don't have time to go into all of that, but if you define a new wall assembly in a project and you think you might reuse it, you might need it for another project, put it into your template. If you define a new surface appearance, the appearance of stucco or brick or siding or some other thing, and you take some time to craft that, put it into the template. Now, whatever you have in the project should be set up so that you can quickly access it. There are tools within ArchiCAD for favorites. I've pioneered a methodology I call the interactive legends, where you can eyedrop things, but basically a good template will make it easy to get your settings without having to fuss with them every time. The layout book should be set up in the best way for your projects. You might have more than one style. You might have smaller and larger projects with different structures, but set it up so that when you start a new project, you don't have to rethink it. Well, I'm going to number it this way, and I'll need a sheet for elevations, and I'll need a sheet for this. No, it should already be there. Same thing with schedules and other things in the setup. To the extent that your template has it built in, it saves you time. Make sure that things are consistent there. Now, in MasterTemplate, my philosophy was to set up as much as possible to minimize the need to create things on the fly. It's easier to supply something for you to rework than for you to create it fresh. Now, Graphisoft's philosophy is a little different. They do try to provide a good template, but they sort of have to err on the side of simplicity, in the sense that often they're saying, let's not make it too complicated. Let's make it so that a beginner can approach it and go, oh, I understand that. Whereas MasterTemplate, while you can use it as a beginner, it's really designed to be extensible and handle complex situations. And I would prefer you to have something to work with and rework than to have to say, how do I do this? All right. It's built on top of Graphisoft standards so that you can bring things in from a standard project into MasterTemplate easily. And I provide a lot of resources within the template and a sample project as a teaching tool so that you can learn more about how ArchiCAD does and can work. And I'll be showing a few of those things today. And I keep pushing the limit every year. You know, what's new? What else has Graphisoft provided? How can we take advantage of it? How can we avoid some of the issues? I know this has all been a lot of words and waving my hands here. We are going to be looking at many of these things just in the context of design options. Plus, I'll show you a few other goodies as well. So there are interactive legends of visual favorites. A legend, as I think we all know in common practice, can be some graphic images with maybe text that says what this is. This is a certain type of wall, or this is a symbol representing an outlet or a receptacle or a lamp, etc. When you do the things, when you create that with the tool that is that you draw it with, you can use the eyedropper and pick up the settings to say, I'd like to do a wall like this, a 2x6 interior wall, or this type of exterior wall with concrete masonry there. So these favorites are accessible via the eyedropper, and I've set them up actually in a worksheet as well as on the plan using some clever mechanisms so that you can have it off to the side and just eyedrop it and then continue your work without having to lose your place. Things are linked, and you can update a template and have them have it update in all projects, or certainly develop your template, and when you start a new project, it will include it. The 2D legends are a feature where in some views like elevations, you may want to put in some graphics like trees or people or cars or something like that. Or possibly some mini details like a wall assembly, intersection there. So a lot of things that are built in. I'm not going to try to summarize them too quickly. Now I'm going to talk about MasterTemplate 27, ArchiCAD MasterTemplate AMT 27, and the design options framework. So we'll now start going into the framework of how does Graphisoft set this up? What does it do for us? And how have I put this into MasterTemplate. And rather than try to explain this, I'll just say that it showed up in a number of different places and required a lot of careful thought to maximize it. So you'll see that in just a few minutes. Now, if you do decide at some point today or another time to get MasterTemplate, it's available through AC Template. Let me just see, actemplate.com here. So ArchiCAD template, actemplate.com. And I do have a special introductory offer for MasterTemplate 27, at least through the end of the year. Maybe I'll extend it. If you go to bobrow.com/buy-AMT27, you can get it for $297, and you can upgrade. bobrow.com/upgrade-AMT27 will give you a discount on the upgrade if you owned a previous version. All right, that was a lot of words. Now we're going to go into design options here. And this is one of the most exciting things that I've seen from Graphisoft in a long time. I do think that, they often have little things that we take for granted, things that we don't even notice until like, oh, there's a checkbox here. But this is one that I think is really worth studying and taking advantage of. Key question that it handles is, how do you explore and present multiple design options? And now in older versions of ArchiCAD and in any CAD program or design program, BIM program, you could always take your building and copy it to the side, and you could create another variation. And you could have 3 of them. You could have as many as you wanted. It gets cumbersome, but you could always copy it and then edit it. And that is practical up to a certain point. So that was always available. Now, multiple model files, sometimes that's worth doing. All right, we have the one with this type of facade, and then we have one with a different type of facade. And literally, you just save as a copy of the file, and you work on them independently. And you can, to some extent, say, all right, now that we've settled on this, but I did some work in this other file, you can copy things from one file to the other, and generally they'll line up in their new position. If you say paste into the original position, that can work. But it gets very awkward to be able to switch back and forth, to be able to really develop them both simultaneously, and it certainly had some serious limits. Another way that we've all done this is to create layers. So layers where you say, I'm going to have version 1 of the kitchen on this layer and version 2 on another layer, and you can turn on and off those 2 layers, possibly more than one. Where it gets really complicated is when you naturally want things to be on different layers, like fixtures compared to walls, compared to roofs, etc. And your design variations or options really are a little awkward. If you put them all onto one or a small number of layers, then it becomes a little bit harder to manage as you move forward, and to be able to selectively choose which things you're showing. Renovation filter is an option. I will demonstrate a little bit in just a moment here. And with renovations introduced, I think, in ArchiCAD 15, you have existing, demo, and new tags. So any element can be tagged as this is existing, it's going to stay, or this is existing, but it's going to be demolished, or this is new, it did not exist at the beginning. And so those are 2 different design variations, and you could even use it as such. Existing could just be one version, and new could be another variation, but it really is only before and after, or either or, right? Now, there was a way to extend that a little bit by using what are called renovation filters, and saying that I want to have in this particular filter, and you could have as many of them as you wanted, certain elements only show up on that filter. And so you could literally have several versions of the new stuff by using that renovation filter and locking or pinning elements to it. But one of the real serious limitations is if you wanted to work on variations in the kitchen, and then you also wanted to work on variations of the front facade, and maybe you had variations of the roof, you couldn't, it just became impractical to use that structure because each element would only show up on one variation. So as you had two different areas with different schemes, you literally could not manage it on a practical basis. So with design options, we have now what are called option sets, which would be, say, an area of focus like the kitchen or the front facade. Each set has one or more options, like the kitchen with, the open plan, or the one with the island in the middle, or the one that's bigger versus one that's smaller, all these different things. Only one option will be visible at any given time, or none of the options can be. So you have a base that's called the main model, and then you have one or more variations that you can turn on, but only one of those at most can be turned on. Then you have design option combinations, which allow, like layer combinations, for multiple things to be chosen. So we're going to choose the small version of the kitchen plus the very compact front facade. That's the budget one. And then we're going to say, well, what if it looked like if we had a more impressive facade, but we still had the basic kitchen? So you could switch between those. Now I'm going to demonstrate the interface controls here. Now I think this is probably the best time to just switch over to a quick intro to the basics of design options, and then how does it get complicated? What are the things that aren't obvious? Like, how do you take, I have a floor slab and sometimes it's going to be one size and sometimes it's going to be different. Do we have two different versions of that, or do we put an original one and then another piece that fits next to it? Same thing with a wall. If you have a version of the wall with certain windows and then you have part of the wall that's going to change into a different form, do you have to break it up into multiple pieces of wall? What do you do in order to be able to selectively change larger elements, or the roof line? So you'll see those sort of things. Okay, so I'm going to return to this overview here after I demonstrate. So I'm going to go to the very basic demonstration here in the standard Graphisoft template. Now let me know as I go along if there's anything that's confusing or you want me to explain further. Right now we have 69 people here, so that's great, from all over the world. I know US, Canada, I guess British Isles and Scotland, as well as Australia. So we're getting people from all over the world. Let me just turn off my heat. So let me just demonstrate design options in the most basic form. So I'm going to go just draw a box of walls here. Now the design options palette I'll close and I'll show you, if you haven't used it, you go to Window, Palettes, and you choose Design Options. It's right next to Renovation here. So Design Options. It brings up a floating palette here. Now, in order to work with it, you actually have to click on this button here, which is the Design Option Manager. And so in the Design Option Manager, you have Design Option Combinations, Design Option Sets, and Options here. So let's take a look at just setting up a couple of options to begin with. I'll say I'm going to create a new option set. And an option set, when it comes in, will also have an option here. I'll just call it new option 1 here, and I'll create a new option, and we'll call this new option 2. All right, so what are these? These are two different variations of something in the design that are organized as part of this new option set. And if I turn one on, the other one is off. If I turn this one on, you notice that it turns it off. I can only have one of these on at a time, or I can have none of them here. Now the option set here, if I click on it, I can name it. So let's say I'll just call it kitchen here, and we'll give this a name, and we'll say larger version and smaller version. Okay, so you can give them descriptive names. Obviously, I'm just making something as simple as possible. Now, custom here in terms of a combination says, all right, well, currently I've got certain things turned off, and it's just on the fly, it's done. Let me create a new combination here that says kitchen larger, and I'll create a new one that's kitchen smaller. Okay. Now, at first, these really don't do anything because I have to tell it, well, to get the larger kitchen, I have to turn this on. Now, if I click over here to smaller, see they're both off, and I say turn this on. Okay, now if I go to main model only, it turns these off, and I cannot turn them on because the main model is defined as something that's the base, and other things are added to the base. All right, so now that we've defined this, let me say OK. You'll see that as soon as I click OK, this appears here. We have the option set and the options within it. Now, I'll just go and create some walls here. I'm not going to worry about the type of walls, but I'll say that this is, here we're going to do, say, a small version here. Now, I'm not going to worry right now about the cleanup of the walls because right now I drew it with the exterior wall type. I'm just going to say, what if these are not part of the main model, but they're part of the smaller version of the kitchen? So I click here and I say I want to link it to that. When I do that, they'll disappear because currently that smaller version is not selected. It's not turned on. So I'll say relink. It'll say it'll be moved to an inactive design option. I'll say OK, and they disappear. Now, if I turn on smaller version, you can see they appear. Now, right now, it says fade environment, and because I'm drawing with the main model with the pencil here, this is the environment. If I double click on this, then you can see this now becomes the primary thing. I'm going to put some more things in the kitchen. So let's say that I go and get, I'll just put in a cabinet. So we'll search here. Here. So, all right, let's put in a corner cabinet here. And I hate this this thing. This is reserving space, saying you shouldn't build in anything right in front of that because that's the access. Here, I'm going to turn that off by changing the model view options here to floor plans. Actually, this model view options here to floor plans. Okay, now, so this is part of the smaller version. Now, if I turn off the smaller version here, let's see, if I change this to main model and turn off smaller version, you can see they disappeared. Now, maybe that cabinet really belongs for both kitchens here. So what I'll do is I'll turn on the smaller version, select the cabinet here, and say I want to link it to the main model. So now it's part of the main model, and when I turn off the smaller version, it's still there. All right, now let me create something that's going to be the larger version. So I showed you how I drew these in the main model, then I relinked it. If I instead double click on larger version and then do the walls, and let's say that I go to the wall tool and we do this, these two are automatically part of what I'm drawing on the larger version. So now if I go back to the main model here, the larger version is still visible. If I turn on the smaller one, you can see the main walls plus the corner cabinet stayed regardless of when I did that. Now, we don't have to have this in a gray. We can say, hey, just make them the same color. Don't emphasize that. And we can say, I want to edit the default only. So that means that I couldn't select this. It's not letting me select it because I've said I only want to be editing things in the default. If I do want to edit the smaller version, now I can go and edit these, but I wouldn't be able to edit the main model when I try clicking here. So that's an option. Sometimes when you have a lot of complex stuff, it will help. All right, so this is one design option. Let's look at another area, I'll just make it as general as possible. We'll go in and say, I want to have not a new option here. So let me actually get rid of that. I'll say I want to, let's see, we do here, this plus to new option set. And so this new option set, I'll give it a name, right side. Okay, and then I'll say I want to create a new option within that, and one, and new option 2. Okay, so now you can see that there's a new option set here, and I can potentially turn these on and off, and I can work on this. Now, meanwhile, in here, I have the kitchen versions here as combinations that turn on and off. You can see what this does, but they're not doing anything with the right side. So we're going to see how that interacts in just a second. So let's just say that I go to the right side. I'm going to do version 1, and we'll just draw this here, and I'll do version 2, and I'll do something different here. So now if I switch on the fly, if I go back to the main model here and then switch between these, you can see how those are switching. Now, down in the bottom here, you can see how this says custom. And this allows me to use the design options combinations. So I can switch between the larger kitchen and the smaller kitchen, but notice how this stuff here is not on, because an option is optional, meaning that you don't have to have one of them on. So let me go and edit this a little bit. We'll go into the design option manager, and let's say kitchen larger. I'm going to rename it here, kitchen larger plus right side 1, and I'll just say this is what I'm doing here. Now, a kitchen smaller, I'll also try plus right side 1, and I'll turn this on. So now this is a combination of some choices within each of these here. So now if I switch between kitchen larger, right side 1, and kitchen smaller, right side 1, you can see how this is retained, but of course I can manually switch between these here. So it can get complicated because you could have multiple different option sets in different parts of the project, and each combination, well, you take 2 of these and 3 of those and another 2 of those, and all of a sudden you have, potentially 12 different combinations. So this allows you to, on the fly, the design options palette allows you to, on the fly, choose between them, whereas down below here, these allow you to define combinations that you can quickly access that do multiple things that may be coordinated. And the views, if I go into a view, let's say, schematic design, floor plans, we'll do the first floor plan here. What do the settings have? Settings have, let me just bring this over. The settings now have a design options area. So we've had for decades layers and scale and other things that are part of a particular view. This is now introduced, and I can say, hey, I'd like it to be this particular combination of things. So now, if I double click here, you can see it is using a particular design option set. Now this view has some other settings to make it, what do you call it, schematic appearance with just a solid black, but it activated this particular combination. All right, so that's the basics of design options. And I'll just go back to the Word presentation here and say what were we just covering. And then in a minute, I'm going to say, well, what are the limitations? What's the problem here? Is there a problem? What do you need to figure out? Well, so there's an option set. I had the kitchen, I had the right side. It's a group of design variations. Each set has one or more options, only one is visible at a time, or none of the above. Each design option combination has a specific combination with single choices for each option set. So you can have different versions of the kitchen or no version of that kitchen there, etc. Now the interface controls the palette. It's the one that I had on the left side that allows manual on-the-fly selection of different options. So you can turn on and off different options. You can change whether you're seeing things all in one color or you're highlighting the working area and not the environment, and whether you're allowing yourself to inadvertently select things, maybe in the main model that you don't necessarily want to change right now. So those are manual controls. The design options, and this is the design options manager actually, allows setup of option sets and the options themselves. And then the pop-up from the bottom quick options bar allows manual selection of different combinations here. And then within the view, it records a preferred or an active design option combination. Now the default in Graphisoft is main model only. So this is where we start to have some issues, and I'm going to try to demonstrate sort of in as simple a way as possible where the challenges come up and why in MasterTemplate I set up things, well, a little differently, and still Graphisoft would recognize this. They wouldn't say, wow, what the heck are you doing? But I'm going to explain why I've got certain things worked out. Now you can do it yourself in your own projects, but I put it into MasterTemplate in part so that I can easily demonstrate, a way to work. All right, so when we have the default in the Graphisoft template as main model only here, I had to go into the view and say, oh, you know what? I want it to be this kitchen one, right? Okay, whereas every other view that's here, if I go to the settings, it says main model only. So main model only turns off all of the design options. It only has the main model. Now you may say, well, that's fine. Main model is a good base, but two problems with that. One is if I do want to see a coherent set of drawings, whenever I double click on any view, whether it's a plan or an elevation, a section, a 3D view, etc., it will invoke an option combination. That's just built in now. You can't say ignore that. All right, so when you double click on a view, it invokes it. Now, if it always invokes the main model only, then you have to go manually change that combination after you do that. Now, what I've set up in MasterTemplate is a base model. It's just simply a combination, just like I had, large kitchen plus right side number one. So it's a sort of, it's a combination, and I set all of the views to have that. Now, why is that useful? Because if I change the definition of the base model, then all the views, plan sections, elevations, 3D, etc., update instantly. So very, very powerful to reference through an editable combination rather than lock it in to the main model. Now, this becomes even more important when you realize that while we can add things like I just drew some walls, you may want to have different versions of things. And therefore, if you have different versions, you may not want the base element or a version to be in the main model, because you literally cannot remove things using the system from the main model. The definition of the main model is it's the stuff other than the options. So let's see how that plays out. So if I go here, I hate the black shape here, so I'm going to go back to this one. Ooh, first floor existing. Okay, so okay, first floor here. All right. So now it's looking more like what I'm used to seeing here. So let's say that the front facade here, and we'll just take a look in 3D, not that there's anything much to see, it's just a box, right? So I'll take this front facade and let's create two versions of it. So I'm going to give it some appearance. Right now I'm not going to change the wall assembly. I'm just going to change the appearance to make it as quick as possible. So I'll say that the outside surface here is going to be a color. Let's go to our colors here, and I'll say that it's going to be a peach color. Okay, there. Now, what if I wanted to have a variation where it was another color? Maybe it's changing material. It's going to wood siding instead of, stucco or whatever we have. Well, how do I do that? Well, first of all, this element is, when I selected it, it says, oh, it's part of the main model. So I can't hide it when I have a new version. So I would have to have it as a variation. And also when I switch versions, from option 1 to option 2, I can't change its color. I can't change its attribute. I literally have to make a new copy of it. So let's see how we work with that. So I'm going to go in here and we'll say, give me a new, well, actually not that. We'll create a new option set here and front wall here. And we'll create a new one and we'll call it peach, and a new one here and we'll call this blue. So, all right. Now, if I say I want this peach one, I think it was peach, whatever I chose, to be here, I can select this and say relink it. It'll say it'll be moved to an inactive design option, so it'll disappear, right? Okay. Now, if I turn that on, it's back again. If I turn on blue, it's gone. If I have none of the above, just the main model, it's gone. So the main model no longer is a complete version, because I'm saying, hey, I may want to have this one way or the other way. So let's turn on the peach one, and I'll take this, and I'm going to, there may be a better way to do this, but this is the way I've worked out. It seems to work pretty well. I'm going to drag a copy of this here. And since this is such a simple model, I don't have to worry how far. I'm going to move it back in a second, but I'm going to drag a copy here. All right, I'm going to change the color of it. So let's see, change the color here to blue. Okay, and then I'm going to highlight this. I'm not going to turn this on, but I'm going to relink it. So this blue one is going to be linked to that. It'll say it'll disappear because that's inactive. And now when I turn on the blue one, there it is. Okay, so now I'll just drag this back into position. All right, so now when I switch between peach and blue, it looks like the wall changes, but it's actually a different wall. Okay, could be different types of windows, doors, etc. All right, so now if I go just to main model, if I turn this off, it's gone. Okay, so while before maybe it was, we had a complete shell of the building, now we don't have a complete shell. So what I created was in MasterTemplate is a new combination here. It's technically it's not part of this upper section because the main model only is, so it turns everything off. The current is whatever was the last thing that we were looking at. And I'm going to create a new combination here that is base model, okay? And the base model is going to have one of these versions, the peach one, all right? Here, so I say okay. So now if I go to base model, we know we have that. Now, if I go to the kitchen one, hey, the kitchen one doesn't have a front thing, so I would need to go in and edit and say, you know, the kitchen one, I do want to have one of these, and you know, we'll just put the peach as the default. Okay. So now if I go to any of these combinations, whether it's base model here, which removes all the interior stuff, or one of the versions of a kitchen, etc., I do have a front thing there. And if I were to set the floor plan here to, instead of main model, base model, then what if I change what the base model is? All right, so if I change the base model, if I go in here and say the base model, actually, no, you know what? We're going to have this one. And in fact, the base model is going to be the larger version of the kitchen and the right side one here, or maybe this one, okay? So now that's the base model. So when I say okay, you notice how everything changes in 3D. And when I go to the floor plan, if I've got the first floor plan here active, then we've got, you know, this configuration. So what is the base model? It is a starting point with some set of options. And of course I could have it without some of these interior things, but I probably want to have a version of the shell or a version that's coherent. So now let's look at it in the context of MasterTemplate, how I've implemented this in a more general way. So I'll switch to the simple version of MasterTemplate, or actually the MasterTemplate itself, as opposed to the sample project. Now, MasterTemplate comes with a little tiny building just to help you to visualize certain things, but it's intended that you get rid of that building and then draw your own. So I also have notes here. I'm not going to go into them, but it explains how to approach getting started with MasterTemplate. To get rid of these, I can select any one of them as long as they groups are active. So the groups are active here, and I've got, I should put this into, actually put it into template development here. What template development does is it turns on all the stuff that's in the template, and then I can easily select the notes and delete them. And if I wanted to, I could select the building and delete that and sort of start fresh. Now, in this case, I do want the building to be there, so I'm going to undo this, and I'll put it back to the first floor. All right, now the first floor is showing a rather odd combination here. This is being demoed, and this is being added in here. And so this is a particular version showing both. This is using the renovation filter. The renovation filter is show all with overrides. So it's showing the existing elements, it's showing demo elements and new elements with overrides. That's why we have this looking natural and these, you know, identifying what's old and new. Now, if I go to AXO planned, all right, so what is this? This is a view of that building where the front piece was removed, and we have this, you know, a little recess and a more complex door. If I go to all reno phases, that's showing the original one and not showing the fact that there's something behind it. If I go to all reno with overrides, you can see that it's showing this translucent. And this one here is saying, is doing the show all with overrides, but in 3D. The show all doesn't have any overrides. This one has the overrides. So this is using the renovation thing, but now let's look at the AXO and planned 1B. So what is this? It's a 3D view with a variation. So you can see that the left side of the building is unchanged. The right side has, some glass block there for lots of light. Now, this is using a design option combination called 1B. If I switch it to 1A, you can see that it's changed the way the wall looked. Now, if I go back to 1B and then say, well, what about 1C? Here it's thinking about it. Interesting that it's taking a second to update. Don't know why this is happening here. But what I'm going to show you is that I have two different versions of the wall. Wow. I have several versions of ArchiCAD open, but still this is a little unusual that it's taking this time. Hopefully let's see, I click to abort here. Yeah, I've got a spinning ball. Are you able to still hear me? Just make sure that the webinar thing hasn't affected. Yes, thank you, Ken. All right, so Charles, okay, thank you from Emily and Charles. So Charles said, can an element such as windows be an option while the wall is in the main model? Yes, so I didn't demonstrate that. And this is very strange. This, ArchiCAD seems to be a little stuck here. So let me go and force quit this copy of ArchiCAD. And we'll just reopen this. I'll send the report here. And when that's done, I'll reopen the template here. So we'll go here, say open, and I have MasterTemplate, USA, actually USA here, and launch a new instance here. And it'll tell me that it's in use because it crashed. Thank you, Buzz, letting me know that you can hear me loud and clear. All right, so we'll get this open. So a couple of things that I didn't demonstrate. Yes, you can have doors or windows as different options. And you can say this door is option 1 and this other version of the door is option 2. Or same thing for windows. Now I'll say, reopen this, take control, and it's opening up on the other screen. So I'll just bring it over here. And we'll just get rid of, go to template development, get rid of the labels there. Okay, and here was where we were, and I was just looking at planned 1B, and if I were to switch this to 1C, there we go. Okay, so that's what I should have done instantly, right? Now, it turns out this wall is different than the other walls, just like I demonstrated earlier. If you want to have the wall have a different assembly, it's made of different things, or a different surface, or anything different about the wall itself, it has to be a different design option. If you want to say it appears or doesn't appear, depending upon the design option, that's fine. So what I did was I literally, you saw me earlier drag the wall off to the side a little bit, change its color, relink it, and then move it back after. You can literally drag a copy on top of itself. So you now have two copies of the wall or the window, etc. And while it's selected, switch it, relink it to another design option. And then in that other design option, when you turn that on, you can edit it. So now it's a copy of the wall or a copy of the window or door. Now this, let's see if I go back to 1A, this window, let me bring up the palette actually it's on the other screen here. So this window is part of option A. If I switch to option B, you can see it switched this, and this window is part of option B. You can see how it highlights that. If I switch to option C, it looks much the same, but I've got the wall. The wall is part of option C. So if I highlight this, so if I click on a wall, you can see this wall. Whoops, let's make sure groups are suspended. This wall is part of the main model, and it has different versions of the window. This wall is part of option C. So in order to be able to have different versions of the wall, you need to put the wall into one of the options as opposed to the main model. Now, if I switch this to main model only, you'll see that the main model has no window here, and it has no wall there. Why? Because I have different versions of the wall, and they are in different sub options. You know, 1C has this color here, 1B has a different version of the wall, and 1A a different version of the wall with a window. Now, this window here is part of option A, because if I switch to option B, you'll see there's a different one there. Now, this window is not actually part of the option. It belongs to the wall. Now, how do I know that? If I open up the Windows settings and we go down to classification and properties, it says that it is part of option A, design set 1. You can see this, but it's gray. Why? Because the wall is part of that. This is the one on the right side. So if I go to this one here and we open this up, it is option A, design set 1, and I can literally switch which one it is. So this is editable because the wall is part of the main model, but this one is not editable because the wall is one of the options. So you can't go multiple levels deep in that sense. So if you want to have the part of the wall being removed or part of it being, you know, a different configuration, or different surface or different assembly, etc., that part of the wall or that entire wall has to be set as a design option, and the window or openings that are within it just belong to it. So if you want to have different versions of the window, you have to have different walls. So if I switch to option B here, this wall is part of option B. And when I switch to option C, this is actually a different wall. And I just literally dragged a copy of that. Now, this was all ABCs, okay? And I'm not going to get into college and graduate school and nuclear physics in the next section here, but I am going to show you a more complicated, complex situation, which is more realistic in the sense that design options include not just walls, but they include, in many cases, objects like cabinets. They include roofs, floors, other things that have to be reconfigured. So let's take a look at that in the sample project. So one of the reasons I have a sample project is it is so much easier for me to demonstrate something and explain it than to have to draw it from scratch, right? Okay, so here is a little project which probably many of you, if not all of you, have seen because I've used it over the years. It was designed by my dear friend Scott Bulmer, architect, not as a real project, but just simply as a way of having a small project that showed a lot of different intricate things, okay? So for example, if I go to AXO existing, you can see this wall is set up as existing. And when I go to AXO overall, we've got new walls that are new here. Now, if I go to AXO all reno phases, you can see Hopefully this doesn't have a problem here. Why is it taking so long to update? Oh boy. Oh, there it is. Okay, all reno phases. Well, this is all reno phases, but let me do the one with the overrides. And now you can see the green is the new stuff. Behind it is the orange color that was the existing one with a window there. Okay, so this is the workflow that we've had since ArchiCAD 15 of existing and new, possibly removing some stuff. If I go to the floor plan here, so I go to the floor plan, here we've got this, and if I go into the section where we switch between existing plans, here you can see this wall is a partition. This is a smaller one. If I go to the new and demo plans, this has got the overrides. You know, we can see the overrides. And if I go to, I guess the actual floor plan here, this is the destination. This is the planned result. It does have a little bit highlighted of what's new there, but it's not showing dashed or anything like that. Now, what's different with design options? Well, let's take a look at something that I put in as an example for design options for an enlarged sleeping area. So you can see the sleeping area here, and I'll double click here. And you can see how that changed this arrangement, made the sleeping area bigger. This is, by the way, just a grid line here, so it's not actually a separator. Now, this has another option, enlarge both. And you can see how this has happened. Now, let's zoom in and see a little bit more closely what's going on here. So if I go back to the, let's close these guys here. I want to be able to switch quickly here, first floor plan. All right, so this wall here, when I go to the enlarged sleeping one, a similar wall is interior. So this one is part of the enlarged sleeping area here, whereas when I go back to this wall is part of the base design. Remember, base design as opposed to just main model, okay? So because it's an option here, now I can remove it or turn it off when I switch to the enlarged sleeping area. And then this one, of course, is only part of that version because when I enlarge the whole thing, it disappears. And this is actually a separate little piece that's only part of the enlarged kitchen here because it's an interior one there. Now, you may not have thought too much about this because it's pretty routine, but there's some cabinets here, basin, wall cabinet, and similar over here. When I switch to the base design, they don't exist. Well, okay, that's sensible. It's just saying when we enlarge the kitchen, we need to put in more cabinets or we have the opportunity to do so. Notice that we have a step or, a platform and then some steps up to it here. And when I switch to this, we have the same configuration, but up here. So this only exists here. When I go to the base design, it's a different element than this. So literally, I had to make a copy of this one and assign it to when I needed it. Here, if I turn this one on, this is a separate copy of it. Why? Because I have to be able to turn on or off elements and replace them with other things if needed. So in the base design, we have a step and a platform. Here, we have the same ones, but they're copies. And then here, we have copies that have been moved. So we now have the concept of saying, you know what? If we're going to have different variations of some things, they may look like they're the same element but moved, but literally they're copies that are part of that design option there. Now, part of this is hey, look, this is a floor underneath here, and the floor, this is part of the main model. And if I go to the base design, you can see it goes out to where the framing line is for the wall, and it's so the wall rests on top of the structural floor in there. So that's where this slab is. Now, when I switch to another version, you notice there's this gap, but it's not a gap. It's another. It should be another piece of wall. Let's see if I know with this one here. Yeah, okay. It looks like I actually left one out. This one is the piece that's added to it. Now, one thing that I was very pleased to see with Graphisoft is that these two elements, we don't see a solid line. If you draw, let me just eyedrop this. If I draw a slab and another slab like this, in the old days, if I drag them on next to each other, we would see a line. Now that line can disappear. This is based. This is optional, but it's based under. It's under Document Model View Options, and I have a bunch of them. This is for construction documents, but one of the options here is whether you, when you have slabs that are adjoining each other, does this line show or not? It's looking to see if the top is the same surface and if they have the same top surface and top height and cover fill. So they basically look the same in 3D. Now you can eliminate it. You can say show lines. That's like the old way. And you can also say use hidden lines, which would be a dashed one here. So eliminate is very cool. And I have it set for most of the model view options to say, you know what, we're just going to extend it. Just don't show a line because it's all going to be smoothed out, right, in the field there. So that's what we've got going here. So if you think about a design option, sometimes the same element moves. Sometimes you have it is different. Well, I mean, we can have elements like the wall that change surface appearance or color. We can have them change position in space. Those are two different copies of the same element that are linked to design options. Now the slab, I could create two versions of the slab, but instead I have one base slab and then I just have a fill, an extra piece that adjoins with it. Now, what about roofs? How do you do it with roofs? Well, let's take a look in 3D at some 3D. Let's see, we'll go to an axo. We're here. All right. So this is the other side. Here is the kitchen area, and here's the bump out. This is the sleeping area. Now, if I enlarge the sleeping one, you can see how this is bumped out. So it's a different wall. It's just a copy of this wall, dragged into position and associated with the thing. So here we are, base design. This view switches us to the enlarged sleeping area. And then what about when we switch it to the enlarged both? Okay, the kitchen wall comes out. But if you were paying close attention, you may have noticed that the roof changed. We couldn't extend this out without extending the roof. Here's the original roof, which stops here. Okay, and again, this is a question I was wrestling with, was saying, well, how do you handle that? Well, with the slab, you can add a fill, like another piece there. With the roof, maybe you could, but it's much easier in this case when you have a complex roof system to have a copy of it. So I literally copied this entire roof and then made a new version of it that was a different shape. So let's take a look at it on plan. So if I go to the, we'll go to the second floor lower roof plan here. All right, so this is with the more compact version. here. Now, if I switch this to the enlarged sleeping area, you can see how the roof extends. And when I switch it here, the roof extends further. Now, each of these roofs, they look like they're the same roof with different versions of it, but they're copies. Again, just like moving the steps to a new place, I had a copy because it had to be done here. This whole thing had to be done. So I dragged a copy, relinked it. Now, what about an elevation? Well, obviously you're going to see those differences in the elevation. So if I go here to north elevation here, so if I go to the original north elevation, all right, this is with only one part of it bumped forward and the roof just tucking in neatly here. And if I go to the north elevation enlarged sleeping area, you can see different version. And when I go to enlarge both, you can see what it's doing here. Now I have a little issue here. This window would need to be raised. So when you're doing design variations or design options, you're going to test out things. You're going to say, well, let's try this. And you may not get everything perfect. You just need to see enough to make some decisions. And ultimately, you're going to say, oh, yeah, this is better with that kitchen larger. So that means we're going to have to change this window and take it up above the roof line. And other changes. You may notice here that we've got some rafter tails. I haven't put in all the rafter tails here. I haven't done the change in framing. So if I go down to the basement plan here, you can see here's the framing. Now if I switch it to the enlarged sleeping area, I'm not seeing any changes. Here, the steps moved, but I'm not seeing any changes because I haven't actually updated this lower part. If I go to the first floor plan and we click on these, you'll see I've adjusted those. I just haven't adjusted or followed through on the basement. Now, just getting back to this thing about the base model. In MasterTemplate, when I converted the sample project and when I converted the template forward from the earlier version to ArchiCAD 27, and we looked at the settings of these things. It was set to be main model only. Now, main model only, as I showed you, will not have some elements that are going to be in different positions or different settings. In order to be able to change an element as opposed to add it, I have to take it out of the main model. So let me just show you, I had to actually select all of these views and change them to a named view. I called it base model. Now you could actually have more than one of these named views, and in fact, we do. We have some combinations here for that. But let's look at what happens if I switch here to main model only. You notice that all the stuff that would be different in the different variations is just not there. If I go to the 3D view, we might not see it from this side here, but if I go to rotate this around, if I switch this to main model only, there's things that I had to be able to change, so that this disappears. So main model, it's an important concept. It's saying these are things that don't change, but in order to be able to show different variations of things, you need to be able to put them into design options. And if your views are set to what do you call it, to the main model only, then you have to manually change them, and that's a bit of a pain. Now, fortunately, you can literally go and select, let's just say I select all of these views here. I can go into settings and I can say, I'd like to change these views from main model only to base design. So that's what I did. Now, if I go shift down to here to include more of them, you notice it says mix selection to edit properties, select items of the same kind. It wouldn't let me do that. And at first I was puzzled, oh God, I'm gonna have to open up every folder. I'm gonna have to, make those changes individually. But then I found out if I just use the Command or Control key to deselect the folder, now I have a bunch of views, but no folder, and I can go in and I can change, these things here. So I could literally go from here down, to here, and then as long as I remove the folders, and just go and remove these folders, I will get this here. So I did it in 3 or 4 chunks, but yeah, I was able to do literally in 5 minutes update all of them to be the base model rather than the main model. Now, it turns out if you select a clone folder, then, and you make a change here, it will affect all of these views, just like when you change a layer combination, here or anything else, it'll affect all the views within it. So you don't actually have to open up and set the individual items in the clone folder. But when you do have general folders, you need to select all of these individual items, using shift click to get a batch of them, and then deselect the folder itself. It would be nice if they, refine it and allow you to say, all right, it doesn't matter if you've got some folders selected, you don't have to. We just will ignore trying to set that. Anyway, so that's what I did there. Now, another thing that I didn't demonstrate, but we'll now just take a quick look at, is if I go to the layout sheet here, it's going to update these drawings, so it'll be ready in a second. You'll see that, I just move this to the side and move it here. All right, so this is the north elevation with this sort of standard configuration. Here we've got this part bumped out. Here we have the whole thing bumped out. Sort of hard to see at a glance, but if you look at the roof line, you can see how the roof line is significantly different. And here you can see here's the base one, here's enlarged in one area, here's enlarged in both areas. So you can have these placed on sheets because they are named views that have design option combinations there. Now, if I go to the next page here, this is a combination of remodel views and what do you call it? Design option views. So this top group here have to do with this bump out. So this bump out, this is existing, this is the bump out, and here's something that shows the change. This side, I'm focusing on, here's the small version, here's the one with one part bumped out, here's the part with both bumped out. You can see how the roof is very different here. And here's the elevations, just like I showed in the other sheet where the roof now extends all the way across, etc. So the power of this is that you can have as many different areas that you might want to explore. You can have views that record them, and you can reference with something like base model, a combination, or you can create combinations and have one that is preset for all your views. And that would be what I would consider a sort of subtle but powerful best practice, is assign your main views in your template to use a particular named view that is not specific. It's just base model, and then we can switch. So if I, just to do that here, if I switch this to the base design there, now this is a plan, base design, and the 3D here, I switch this to base design. All right, so here's our plan. Now, if I go into the design option manager and say that the base design actually is going to have the larger shape. So I'm saying that this combination is going to be a different version. And of course, I could have multiple things here. Now I say, okay, this updates, the floor plan updates, every view updates because base design combination has made some different choices. So that became, for me, like an aha. Oh, that works beautifully. So let's open it up to questions and see what other things maybe I haven't covered. I will also return back to the main template because this is, a little demonstration project and just show you, I guess, this little building is intended to be, disappear. You just select it and delete it. But what I have in the here is I have a base model combination that could have some combination of this. I have two generic option sets, which you could rename as kitchen and front facade or whatever you want to call it. You can rename the options, A, B, and C here to be descriptive, like I had compact or expanded or wood siding versus, CMU or whatever. And then these combinations, excuse me, in the template, 1A, you can see it says turns on this first one here. 1A and 2A turns this on. So remember that you could have nothing of this and only these things. So 1A, 1B, 1C, switch these, but don't have any of those. 1A, 2A has that combination. Now, again, you can rename these anything you like. You can create as many as you wish here, but as a framework for saying, all right, we'll have a couple to begin with, we'll add as many as needed, we'll rename them as appropriate, and we'll have combinations that at least potentially have two or more option sets being specified. That's a framework that's very general. You can build on that easily. And base model is a concept that I think is very powerful. So let's see then. All right, so Ray Kelly says, does what you are illustrating work with a remodel project where you have existing altered areas and additions? Yes, in fact, I showed the existing remodel, existing demo and new in an area separate from the design options, but elements within the design options can also be designated as existing demo or new. So then you can have version 2 with a remodel versus new. I mean, you can have combinations. It would be sort of complicated to set up for me to set up a realistic scenario there. But yes, elements are tagged with a renovation status, existing demo or new, and they can be tagged with, well, they're either main model or they can be tagged with a particular design option. Okay, all right, Karsten has to go Christmas shopping and thanking me. Okay, Merry Christmas. All right, so Andy Bunbury, can you please repeat how you updated the base design again? Okay, so this is the design option manager. This is where you create design, well, where you manage the whole thing, and you can create new option sets and new options. Each one of these combinations here, you literally can change by simply just making a different choice. So let me just go back to the other one, this sample project here. So I made this is an enlarged one here. By the way, this down in the quick options bar, the design option manager can be brought up here. One thing I wish that they had, I don't know why they don't have it. They don't have something here. First of all, you can't, this is a modal dialog. You have to deal with it and then say okay or cancel. I can't go here and say open up the design options palette. The design options palette, of course, I can leave it floating around here. but otherwise, I wish that they had a button here that allowed me to open that. Now, from within this, you can open up the Design Option Manager, or you can click here. And so what I did for the base design was I said, all right, base design is this one, or it's that one. So I'm basically changing the settings, just like you would go into the layer manager and just turn on or off different layers. And then in layer manager, you have to say update the layer combination. Here, you just make a choice and say okay. Now, one thing I didn't demonstrate or talk about is what happens when you make a decision. And you'll see this button here that says accept and merge. So if I like that this is the that this design option that's highlighted is the one I want to go with, then I'll say accept and merge. It will remove these options from the model. It'll say, all right, I'm going to get rid of those. I'm only going to have this one. So let's just see what happens. I say accept and merge. It says it's going to merge it into the main model, and other option sets in other options in the same set will be deleted. Click the button to learn more. Here's information. You know, you can open ArchiCAD help. So I'll just say okay. Now there are no options here. The base design, it's basically this version. That's what I accepted. So whatever that was. So now at this point, I can't go backward. I don't think, oh, here's undo changes to this option manager. Ah, okay, so it does allow you to undo if you realize, oops, I didn't mean to do that. All right. Charles, yes, schedules could respond here. If we go to, no, I don't have any changes in the doors or windows here, but let's look at the other one where I do have some different, window types here. So if we go to our, where is it, schedules, and so we have a window schedule, window types. All right, this window types is based on the base model. The settings here for this schedule is base model. Now, if I say, oh, actually, I want it to be 1C, then that schedule will refresh, and you can see it's a mess now, because it's now including this glass block wall or glass block window that I put in there. So this is the setting for the view here. So the schedule itself is reporting whatever you tell it to do. To set the context, you have a view of the schedule. So you can have more than one view of the schedule. Now, probably the width of different cells, I'm not quite sure how that would be handled. Let's just actually do a quick test here. If I double click on this, it widens it up. If I double click here, it changes it. So I've now made a lot of space there. Now, if I were to change the settings of this to the base model or 1A or whatever, oh, okay, that worked. It did. Now it still is way too tall because I was accommodating something. So there are some limitations there, but it is reflecting that. So that's there. And here's design options. Yeah, if it's gray, I can't edit these here in this mode, but I can change the settings of the view to be a different version here. Okay. Tom says, this seems to be useful for only trivial design options, not requiring multiple structural changes on many different layers. Well, I don't know, Tom. I haven't worked through it in a real project, but what I demonstrated was in the sample project was changing the option for the configuration for that sleeping area in the kitchen allowed extra pieces to be added, such as cabinets and some flooring. It allowed a swap essentially of an exterior wall, which was a return, to an interior wall, basically two different versions. It allowed moving things, like, you know, a copy of that wall is now off in a new place, and it allowed just having new versions of the roof, and it could do for framing. So if you think about it, really, whatever it's worth for you to put in place in a complex situation is explore that other option, turn that on, create new things, edit things as needed, and you now have a coherent alternative version. And then when you switch back, it's switching anything that you've told it to create new, it's switching to the earlier version. So I don't think it's only for trivial design options. So if it's something that's worth exploring and saying, here's two very different concepts, you literally can do that. So, all right. So it'll be interesting as I talk and help and coach ArchiCAD users with this to see if there's some things that I don't understand right now that come up and go, oh God, that's a deal breaker. Or, oh yeah, that's really awkward. I think the big thing for me in my understanding was to realize that main model only was a limited way to set your views, and that a generic combination or more than one is a great way to have the views set so that you can literally just switch on the fly and have all the views change. So that was a big insight. Not too hard to implement, but something that you might not think of. And you might say, oh, I have to change every single view. No, you can just have all the views reference something and change that definition. So, all right. So, am I going to do anything with my new ArchiCAD 27 template? I am selling it. Thank you for reminding me. I did have this up earlier. If you want to buy this, by the way, if you want just a general information about that, actemplate.com. If you want to buy it now, if you haven't owned it before, bobrow.com/buy-amt27. And if you already own a copy and you want to just get the upgraded version, you can go to bobrow.com/upgrade-amt27. So I am now, I'm not sure if that's what you meant, you know, am I going to do anything? I'm selling it. I do need to create some more training things for it, because there's some things that have been added in recent years that have been shown in ArchiCAD user webinars or here and there, but I'll be revamping some of the documentation for this. All right, so Ken Brooks says, how can I participate in this discussion? I open Slack, but not this discussion. Okay, so this discussion, you are part of it. You just type that in Slack. We have, for those of you who are in my ArchiCAD coaching program, I see a couple of people checked in. There you were, Ken. And Nestor asked this. Okay, so this is something we're going to have our coaching call in maybe half an hour. One thing as a little side note, when you buy MasterTemplate, I give you a little bonus. If you buy a new license, you'll get 3 months in my coaching program at no charge. If you buy an upgrade, you'll get 1 month, and you can then get your questions answered. You know, I do weekly calls where I'll even open up your project and look at things in context, fix them if it's something that requires that, like, hey, why isn't this cleaning up? Can you help me? I'll do that. We'll explore why things are happening and help you to achieve what you want. If you want to do the coaching program just in general, you can sign up. It's $47 a month or $297 a year. So quite reasonable for getting sometimes, you know, half an hour or more of my time during a session on your project. Okay, so Ken Andrews says, how do you update to version 27? How do you upgrade? Okay, so the purchase thing, I've just shown that, and I'll just leave it on screen here. So you'd be upgrading. You would go to this site and pay the 97 bucks. You'll then download the file. Now, something that I'll just talk about, I'm not going to demonstrate, but if you want to migrate a file from one version of ArchiCAD to the next version, to upgrade the file, it's similar. Well, actually, there's two things we're talking about. One is, how do you take a version 26 file or a version 20 file and move it up to 27? So without getting into demonstrating it, you open that file in 27, tell it to go ahead and migrate the libraries. It will load in the current library that Graphisoft supplies, plus some supporting components called the migration library. And in general, it's pretty seamless. You just open it up and everything's there. Save it as a new copy, either in a new folder or just with a new name. So you keep the old one in case something comes up and you go, you know, in the earlier version, it looked different, but usually it works just fine. So that's the simple case. Now, there are some library parts that may not convert directly because Graphisoft has changed the definitions. They've made the library parts do different things. So in that case, you may have some legacy parts, older parts, along with the parts that now use the current library. That's fine, but if you want to have a fully cleaned up version, you would go and find anything that was from an earlier version of a library and swap it either one at a time or in groups, like all the windows of a certain size. You can swap it for the new window type. I'm not going to get into demonstrating that right at the moment. Now, if you have MasterTemplate, earlier version, you could literally migrate and open the project in ArchiCAD 27 and it would function. You wouldn't have the new features that I've put into design options, and there'd be other updates that you'd be missing. You can take the legends, which I didn't demonstrate, but I'll open up in a minute, and you can literally delete the old legends and put in the new ones. There's one main area for that, and then there are a few worksheets where that may be helpful to do. So that would update the components that you would eyedrop. Now, if you want to put in the design options framework that I demonstrated today, you could watch this video, the recording, and do that. I'll also probably write up, you know, a little guide so that you can do that, particularly if you have a template that's been customized a lot and you just want to basically use some of the new stuff but not have to redo anything else, then, you know, I'll have a guide to that. Now, if you're starting with MasterTemplate fresh, you have two things to consider. One is you open up the template and you put in your name and your logo and stuff on the title block in the masters, and then you look to see if there's anything else from your current environment that you want to keep or that you want to import, such as unique wall assemblies or the way you have schedules set up, and there are ways to import those into the template. If you have an existing project that you say, oh, I've done some basic design on a project, but I want to put it into this new template, you literally copy the project and paste it into the new template and do a little bit of cleanup of layers, and you're now in MasterTemplate. So I do have a video that demonstrates that process. That's pretty quick process to do that. Because I do use all standard Graphisoft attributes, anything that you, any wall assemblies, surfaces, you know, line types, those all are in there. If you've created any custom wall assemblies or you know, complex profiles, when you copy and paste, they'll come in and they'll look clean. So that's sort of a lot of talking. So Ken, if you do need some assistance on that, or any of you who want to upgrade things or migrate into MasterTemplate, you can take advantage of my offer for the coaching program, sit in on a coaching class, and I can answer specific questions. I can even take, your project and migrate it into MasterTemplate and show you how to clean it up because it's a pretty quick process. All right, so Andrew, am I going to do a demo today? Okay, so thank you for clarifying. I do have some more things in MasterTemplate that I can demonstrate in addition to the design options now that I've demonstrated that. Okay, what's the address to Slack again? If you go to, so Alexander, if you go to bobrow.com/Slack, you'll then have an invitation. It'll say, hey, you're about to join the ArchiCAD training Slack workspace, and you just put in your best email address. It'll send you an email confirmation. You click the link there. You'll set up an account. It's free to be a member of the Slack workspace, and then you'll be connected up. And if you do join the ArchiCAD coaching program call in a few minutes, then I can make sure you're all connected up. All right, so Andrew, you asked if I'm going to do a demo today. Maybe you want to be specific, because MasterTemplate, I could spend 3 hours demonstrating. Let me just think of what would be interesting to show. Well, in the sample project, of course, it's the most interesting to demonstrate what's in the template. Let me just get rid of these 2 little extra pieces there. Put on the base design. Okay. So what's fantastic, what's interesting about the template? Okay, there's the interactive legends are a key feature of MasterTemplate. You'll see here a whole bunch of stuff show up on screen. These are things that are intended for you to eyedrop. So for example, when you're wanting to draw walls, you can eyedrop, hey, I'd like to draw a wall like this one. Let's see. Okay, it switched to the wall tool here. So this is going to be a wall. If I go back to the floor plan, and let's just do a single wall at a time here. That's one wall. If I go back to this interactive legend and say I wanted to do a different wall, I can eyedrop that. And now when I go back here, I'm drawing that. So basically I can go back and forth between the legends and the working area and use this as a way to select things. Now, there are different variations of wall types. You can extend this as you wish. There's different ceilings, different floors, etc. You just eyedrop them. We get into things like windows and doors here, or columns and beams, or maybe the more interesting might be some cabinets. So if I wanted a corner cabinet, I can eyedrop this and then go back and say I want to put in a corner cabinet, say right here, and I want to get the next cabinet piece, go here and say I want a base cabinet here. Eyedrop that, go and pop that in. So you can go back and forth. And this interactive legend worksheet can be in a separate window off on another screen, so you can go back and forth there. Now this is a view of a 3D or of a part of the plan that allows me to have 3D elements like walls, roofs, and other elements that I can pick up. Whereas if you have it in a worksheet, it will, you can't have legends in a worksheet that have 3D, but you can have objects. And so I have some other legends. We'll go to legends here. So we have legends worksheet, and I have cabinets. So these are some more extensive set of cabinets here. We have different rooms. I also have groups of elements. So here's a conference room, and I can literally go and eyedrop this, to pick up individual things, but I can go in, say for this area of the commercial rooms, like this, I can go and say I'd like to select all of these guys here, and maybe actually I need to probably turn off the notes layer. So let's go turn off the notes layer. So now copy this, and I can literally bring that that whole assembly into the model. So while the elements in here are very generic and aren't going to suit your particular design, they can be starting points for, conference room, office, bedroom, dining room, kitchen. All of these things can be brought in. These are what I call quick rooms. And the concept here is that you can, using the framework that I've got, grab bunches of elements that are related and add them to this area so that they are your versions of kitchens that came from 3 different projects that you worked on, or your versions of office lobby, or garage fit out, or anything that might be repetitive. So that's another thing that is included. There's trying to think. There's so much here to demonstrate. There are a lot of training things that are in. Actually, if I go to the sample project, that would be an interesting one that I just remembered. Oh God, I put that in 3 years ago and I haven't looked at it since. So for example, if I go to see this sheet here as an example of presentation here, where is it? Renderings. Okay, so here's some different rendering things, presentation. No, let's see, where is it? There's one that I have some cross and wall sections. Oh God, where is it? I know I had something that I thought, wow, that's so nice. I have to demonstrate it again. It's an exploded cutaway. Let's just see if I have exploded. No, cutaway AXO 3D here. No, that's this one is this cutaway. So cutaway AXO here. Explode. Okay. All right, this is in the main template. All right, it was the sample one that I was looking at. Okay, so that's why there is there it is. Okay. Okay, so that's in the sample project. So here's an interesting thing, and it's worth just taking a minute to sort of show you the concept and then show you, talk about how you would use this. So here we have an exploded axonometric, showing the interior of the building and cutting this top off. Here's a different variation here. Now, what are these? This is a view here, and I'll just drag it off to the side, and you can see that it's the top of the building here. This is the bottom of the building here, and these are individual lines just connecting them on the sheet. Now, how did I create this? If I select this and I say that I'd like to open the source view, this is a live 3D view. These are the actual elements, are not, just 2D lines here. But this is done using what's called a cutaway. So if I go to the, let's see, what is it under, all of a sudden I'm blanking, view, elements in 3D view options. Let's see, no, it's elements in 3D views, 3D cutaway, and 3D cutting planes. Okay, so this is a cutaway that, let's see, no, where is it? If I go to the elements in 3D view, 3D cutaway, Command Y, which is the last letter of cutaway. Want to say Command Y, show cutting planes. I want to show the cutting plane here. So this is, this one is actually not a 3D view. This is a 3D document. If I say open 3D source, that I was confused about. Okay, so if I say this is a cutaway here that is built into ArchiCAD, you can literally cut in any plane and create a temporary view or save it as a view for the view map. And in fact, actually, here's the existing cutting plane. You can see this outline there. And if I right click on this, I can say reverse cutting plane direction. You can see this cutting plane now is cutting off the bottom as opposed to the top. So each of these was saved as a view, excuse me, and then turned into a 3D document. So the 3D document is something that's been built into ArchiCAD for many years, allows you to take a 3D view, save it as something that you can then annotate on top of or draw on top of. And in fact, this this one here is a 3D document. These are 3D elements, but here is some 2D elements that have been placed in that context here, and of course some annotation that has been placed in. So that's something that you know, you can play around with it in the sample project and sort of get a feel for it. But I was very pleased. I learned this from actually this approach from a gentleman in Africa who teaches ArchiCAD. I'm trying to remember his name. I don't remember it right now, but he demonstrated it and I went, oh, that's great. I'm going to put it into MasterTemplate. And so what I generally try to do with MasterTemplate is whenever I learn something that's useful, I add it into the template. If it's something that's going to be helpful for demonstration, for teaching, and of course, if it's useful for project development, then it goes into the main template. Okay, so all right, so Ken says he's updated your coaching call this morning and we'll order the upgraded template. Great, so I'll see you in one of the coaching calls. So Andrew says, is there a layer structure involved? Okay, so in MasterTemplate, if we go to layers, what you'll see is a very extensive set of layer combinations and layers. In recent versions of ArchiCAD, the layers have folders available. So you can say, what are my 3D layers, or what are my 2D layers, or what are my ones related to detail drawings, etc. In the older versions, you just have a long list. The layer combinations here are organized in terms of construction documents of all the different types that generally are needed, you know, floor plans, sections, elevations, landscape, you know, site plans, etc. Model layer combinations, which turn on things that give you variations of the model, just the building by itself, the building with the site, with interior furnishings or without, etc. Some special combinations for presentations that are slightly different than the model ones, and you know, various special purpose ones as well. One of the key features that I discovered through, someone else way back, 20 years ago, was that we could and should have layers that are only shown on a specific layer combination. So for example, when you're putting notes on a ceiling plan, you want to put it on a layer that's only going to be shown on the reflected ceiling plan. You can see this, but this layer is not just for notes. It can be for, excuse me, it can be for fills. It can be for dimensions. It can be for labels, text, excuse me, anything that would only go on the ceiling plan and not on a floor plan or, a landscape plan, etc. So this concept of having a layer that is used for multiple tools, again, text, labels, fills, dimensions, etc., is very powerful. If I go to the electrical one, you can see that this one is only shown on the electrical layer, or the foundation one is only shown on foundation here. Whereas if I go to roof plan, again, a roof version here. Now, other things, of course, as is necessary, if we go to walls, they're shown on virtually everything because they are so important and critical to the drawings and to understanding it. Some things like the furniture are only seen on a furniture plan or some model ones. Now, as I demonstrated this, I just want to point out the names of these layers are fairly long. They are fairly intuitive, self-descriptive, so that you, when you first get to use them, will understand what they're for. Now, there's always going to be some questions. What's the difference between this versus that? Or when do you use one versus another? But in general, the layer names are descriptive, the layer combinations are descriptive, and my philosophy has been make sure you have enough layers that there's always, let's say 98% of the time, when you run a project, you don't have to create any new layers because there's a place for everything to be put. And when you create a new drawing or a new presentation view of some sort, there's a layer combination that relates. So as many layers as we need, but no more than we need, is the philosophy. So that's a little demonstration of part of what differentiates it. If you look at the Graphisoft standards, they certainly have reasons for why they do things, but I feel in general, layers are the one thing that I have taken a very different naming approach to Graphisoft. For other things like wall assemblies or composites, I'll just import or include all of the standard ones that Graphisoft has, the building materials. Why rename those? They're pretty coherent. I do add in MasterTemplate a whole bunch of additional ones, but I don't rework theirs, but the layers I do quite differently. All right. So Andy says, can you add typical details to a legend worksheet? Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about details. Details can be embedded in your template. So let's say you do a whole bunch of residential projects and you have a lot of details that are commonly reused. You can have pre-made detailed drawings that are not associated with a specific model. They're just boilerplate details that you reuse. Those can be in worksheets or they can be in detail views, detail viewpoints, and they can be placed on sheets. So you can have, when you open up a new project, you can already have your foundation details laid out on a sheet and included in detail windows that are independent of the model. That works great. It does add some weight to the project. In other words, there's more data in it. But if if many of your projects use the same details, why not have them in there? By having them in detail windows, you can literally go in and edit them, and say, all right, I'm going to use a virtual trace to sort of look at it in context of the section or something else, adjust things as needed, but you're not starting from scratch. So yeah, you can do that. And so MasterTemplate is really a base file that you can add those things to. Now you may find that you have lots of variations of roof details and floor details and this and that. You may want to put them into a separate file and just copy them in from that other file. So you have a library. So that's another approach that can be effective. And you can either literally copy the line work into a detail window, or you can just reference the detail drawing from the library file onto a layout sheet. You do that, you're typically not editing it, you're just placing it and referencing it from within your project. But if you want to edit it, then you'd want to have the copy and paste the line work into a detail window and then tweak it. All right. Now Andrew says, is there a layer structure within the template for the individual components? Okay, so Andrew, I'm not quite sure what you mean by individual components. So elements that go on layers include all the tools that we have, the walls, slabs, roofs, and 2D annotation tools, line work, etc. Does not include doors and windows or wall ends that cap off a wall, and openings. There are some things that are children of the elements. They don't have layers by themselves. In addition, when you say individual components, if you have a wall assembly and you have the framing and then you have some cladding, etc., those are part of the wall assembly. There's no layers that you can apply, to them. You can designate them as core or facade or cladding or other, but those are not layers. So I'm not quite sure when you talk about individual components what you're referring to. So there's nothing that I'm doing in MasterTemplate that you can't do yourself, and there's nothing that I'm doing that Graphisoft says, how the heck did you do that? I'm just using ArchiCAD as intelligently as I can, and helping you to use it as efficiently as you can. So Andrew, I'm going to just wait a moment and see if you have any other explanation of what you mean by individual components. Otherwise, we'll finish up. So we've gone 2 hours. I want to remind you that that this, this recording will be placed on my YouTube channel. So youtube.com/Eric Bobrow. And it will be on the ArchiCAD user website, archicaduser.com. If you'd like to get MasterTemplate, you can get it on a special deal right now, bobrow.com/buy-AMT27, or upgrade-AMT27 if you're an existing user. I'll have the sale price at least through the end of the year. Maybe I'll keep it on in January. I haven't decided. If you want to join my ArchiCAD coaching program, you can go to archicadtraining.com/coaching. And if you just want to get good training on ArchiCAD, you go to archicadtraining.com and you'll see my ArchiCAD Best Practices 2020 course, which includes that as well. So I want to thank you for joining me today. It sounds like my wife is brought me some lunch. I'm just waving her off, saying I'll get to it in a little bit. So if you have any other questions for me, separate from the ones you've typed in here, just send them to support@bobrow.com and I'll be happy to answer you. I love helping ArchiCAD users. I've done it now for 34 years. It's pretty crazy. And I expect to continue to do it for a while longer. It's half my life. I'm 69. So literally I started when I was 35. Pretty amazing. So I wish you well for the holidays and for 2024. May it be a successful year and one in good health. I no longer take my health for granted. Many of you know I had a heart attack 2.5 years ago, and I'm feeling good, healthy. Lost, 15 to 20 pounds, sort of vary a little bit, but I'm definitely carrying less weight and feeling, stronger and healthier and following doctor's orders. So anyway, take care of yourself, be well, and I'll be back next month with more. For those of you who are in the ArchiCAD coaching program, I'll start in about 15 minutes with that call. Take care, be well. Oh, by the way, I see Andrew says, I bought MasterTemplate for ArchiCAD 14. Will it still only be $97? Yes, you get a bargain. You get a bargain. I'm joking about, yes, you do get a bargain. You bought it once, even though you're coming from 14 to 27. Yeah, it's only $97 for any version to upgrade. So yeah, go for it. And if, by the way, if you have an earlier version of ArchiCAD, like 25 or 20 or something like that, when you buy the current version, you get a license. You can download any earlier version that you need. And then if later, maybe 2 months from now, you buy ArchiCAD 27, then you can just go back and download that version. So anyway, I see a lot of Merry Christmases and some thank yous. So take care, be well, and I'll be back again in the new year. All right, bye-bye.